Hello, and welcome to the Songwriters Workshop. This is the series where I attempt to write songs based on the process and techniques of famous songwriters. Each video looks at a different songwriter's writing habits, musical inspirations, and creative process, while also including an original song written using those techniques. So let's take a look at our next songwriter. The focus of this video will be Canadian singer-songwriter K.D. Lang. K.D. started her musical career as a country singer, despite not having a country music background, but rather coming from the world of performance art. She began emulating artists like Patsy Cline with her band The Reclines, and in 1984 they released their first album, A Truly Western Experience. K.D., however, knew she would eventually move away from country music, saying, "I've always been very intrigued and impassioned by so many different kinds of music that I assumed I would move on." And she did just that in 1992 with the release of her solo album Ingenue, which has a more pop-oriented sound, combined with elements from various musical styles like cabaret, with K.D.'s smooth, lyrical voice. K.D. would go on to release several more studio albums, as well as collaborate with artists like Tony Bennett in their album A Wonderful World in 2002, and an album I only recently discovered while researching K.D. that I've become obsessed with, Case Lang Viers, that she wrote with Nico Case and Laura Viers in 2016. And of course, she was once floated as the possible subject of the first ever grunge song, P.S. I Love You, by Robin Sparkles, Daggers.
P.S. I love you.
I wish it was me.
The research for this video comes from the 1992 interview with K.D. by Paul Zollo, found in his book Songwriters on Songwriting. This interview took place after the release of Ingenue, and in it, K.D. discusses her songwriting process for the album, and the experience working with her collaborator, Ben Mink, to create the tracks. Since I am writing on my own, I will have to take on the roles of both K.D. and Ben while writing my song. But as you will see, this collaboration played an important role in the genesis of the album. So let's get into the writing sessions. Like K.D. and Ben, I started with music. When asked if she ever comes into a writing session with a lyric already written, K.D. says, very rarely. Generally what happens is that we'll sit down and we'll discuss, emotionally, what is going on with us that day. And then we will pick up whatever instrument is lying around. So I did something similar. I just started messing around with my guitar, trying to channel how I was feeling that day through what I was playing. I didn't have an idea for a title or any notion of what my song was going to be about at this point. I just found a chord progression that I liked based on how I was feeling. To help with this, I also used another of K.D.'s writing processes and tuned my guitar to a tuning I had never used before. She says while writing music with Ben, "Sometimes we just totally tune our instruments to something completely different from each other. We don't know what we're doing in these tunings, so then we write songs making up chords that work together." She goes on to explain that these unfamiliar tunings help with creativity, saying, "Because I do have a little knowledge of the guitar, that is a block. Then you're thinking C, D, G. You're thinking of all the structures and how it's supposed to go. So when we're completely lost in a world of instinct, you have to be so set on your instinct that you can't apply your knowledge." I really haven't spent much time experimenting with alternate tunings on guitar, mostly out of laziness if I'm being honest, since I don't always want to spend time retuning a guitar. But I found it very freeing writing this way. It took more time to find a chord progression that I liked, since I had to make up chord shapes through trial and error, but it led me to an interesting chord progression I had never tried before. This alternate tuning for me was akin to playing an instrument that I don't really play, something that K.D. also experiments with while writing. To that end, I also pulled out my mandolin, which I rarely play, but even then I found myself falling back on half-remembered chord shapes, so I decided to stick with what I had written on my guitar. The next couple of days were spent recording and arranging my instrumental part in my recording software. This, again, was all before I had given any thought to what my lyrics would be for the song. As K.D. says, what happens is that we get the skeletal structure of the song finished. He, meaning Ben Mink, will start to demo it on whatever machine we are using. He will build a platform for me. And then I get a cassette and I go away and I write the melody and lyrics. So I basically ended up finishing the music for my song before even beginning the lyrics. Some things I would change and move around later, which I'm sure Katie and Ben also do, but for the most part, my instrumental track was complete before writing any of the words. This ended up being an interesting experiment for me. In all my other songs, I had either written most, if not all of my lyrics beforehand, or I wrote the music and the lyrics at the same time. For this song, however, the music was completed first and would be the driving force for the song. This music-first approach led to some difficulty for me when starting the lyrics. Since I really liked what I had recorded musically, I had some trouble finding words to express the emotion of the music verbally. Eventually, I landed on the idea of "Will You Miss Me, Misery," a song about dealing with depression, something I struggle with myself. I think the collaborative process is what makes this style of writing work so well for Katie and Ben, and what gave me so much trouble. Katie says about their collaboration, "I'm a completely guttural and emotional writer. I don't know what I'm doing, and that's why my collaboration works. Ben is very musical and I'm very emotional. I need someone who understands me, and Ben understands me on an emotional level totally when I'm talking about music." I think that's why I was having trouble with my lyrics to start with. My musical brain was overpowering my emotional brain because it wanted to keep the sanctity of the track intact. It wasn't until I stepped away from writing for a few days and thought about what I wanted to say with the song that I was able to come back and write lyrics that I was happy with. I needed to find a way to have the lyrics coexist with the music, rather than serve them. Coming back to my song a few days later, I ended up changing quite a lot of the lyrics. Katie is very specific with individual words while writing, saying, "I struggle with tiny little words, every little word. I take hours sometimes on one word. It's horrible, I hate it." So I tried to focus on making sure every line and every word was exactly what I wanted. Originally, my title was going to be "Do You Miss Me, Misery?" And it wasn't until I changed it to "Will You Miss Me, Misery?" that I really felt I had a good grasp on my song. I went through each line making sure I had the best version of what I wanted to say that I could think of. As I finish up, here's a few more things in the interview that I found interesting about Katie's writing technique. Coming from a performance art background, she found that acting out a song helps in the writing process, saying that while writing Mind of Love, I would walk back and forth, like a pendulum, in an emotional fight between two positions, which the whole song is about. I think when you're in the middle of lyric crafting, it's about acting. I act it out. Katie and Ben are also fans of combining different styles of music to make something new, saying, like we'd mix Kurt Weill and traditional Hawaiian music together, and we just started experimenting with what was coming out. We realized it was like a new vocabulary in music we were creating. She is also very connected with nature and the spirituality of writing, saying, "I feel nature is my biggest textbook, my biggest reference," and saying of songs, "They're gifts, and it's just a matter of clearing yourself and being able to channel into where it's going." Probably I think the biggest ingredient is integrity and honesty with it, not compromising yourself. And you could have the biggest pop record in the world, but did you compromise to yourself? That's the main line. So, using these techniques, let's take a look at how my song turned out. So, that was the demo I came up with, but I don't think I'm quite finished with this song yet. Like I said, I think one of the reasons why Ingenue has such great songs is this collaboration between Katie Lang and Ben Mink. So if you have any suggestions for where you think I could take this song going forward, either musically or lyrically, please let me know in the comments. And if you're interested in reading the rest of Katie's interview or hearing how other songwriters wrote their best songs, I would highly suggest Songwriters on Songwriting by Paul Zolo. Thank you for joining me in the Songwriters Workshop. Please be sure to like and subscribe. I will see you at the next song.